I don't remember what we were laughing about, only that she looked at me afterward, really looked, and the air between us turned into something else entirely. Elena always had that way of holding silence, like it was a secret language only she spoke. I'd forgotten how steady she could be in a room, how everything seemed to orbit her without her asking it to. Tonight, she'd agreed to dinner. My idea, though I said it too quickly, pretending it was casual. "It's just dinner," I'd said, and she smiled like she'd heard the lie under my voice. The restaurant was too warm, soft music curling around us like something meant to slow time. She sat across from me, her coat draped over the chair, the faint scent of her perfume, something floral and dry, settling on the space between us. I caught myself studying the light on her hands, how her fingers rested on the rim of her glass, slow, deliberate, as if every motion was a thought she didn't want to finish. "You've changed," she said finally. Her tone was even, but the words landed somewhere deeper. "Since when?" She tilted her head slightly. "Since you used to sit in the back row, and never said a word." I smiled, more out of habit than confidence. "I talked sometimes." She raised an eyebrow. "Not to me." The waiter arrived, and the interruption felt almost violent, breaking something fragile I hadn't realized we were building. When he left, the quiet came back, heavier this time. I wanted to say something clever, something that would make her laugh again, but her eyes caught mine and held them long enough to make speech feel like the wrong move. Instead, I reached for my drink, fingers brushing the condensation, grounding myself in the small act of pretending I wasn't nervous. She leaned slightly forward, elbows on the table, the neckline of her dress catching the amber light. "You still write?" she asked. "Every day." "That's good," she said softly. Then, after a pause, "I always thought you had something to say. You just hid it well." I could feel the weight of that, how it wasn't really about writing. My pulse had that uneven rhythm it gets when I'm too aware of another person's nearness. She looked away then, glancing toward the window where rain had started tracing uncertain paths down the glass. The restaurant felt smaller, like the walls had moved in an inch closer. Her laugh returned briefly, softer this time. "You keep looking at me like I'm a memory," she said. I hesitated. "Maybe I'm just trying to remember what it felt like." Her hand froze halfway to her glass. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then she took a slow sip of wine, eyes lowered, lashes trembling slightly. When she looked back up, there was something careful in her face. "You shouldn't say things like that." "I know." But I didn't look away. The pause stretched, long enough for the sound of rain to grow louder than the music. She breathed out through her nose, like she was steadying herself, and the corners of her mouth curved in something between a smile and surrender. "You always were bad at pretending," she murmured. "And you," I said quietly, "always knew when I was." Her eyes softened, dangerously so. The kind of look that made every thought in my head dissolve. She set her glass down slowly, fingers grazing the stem like she needed the contact to keep from saying something she'd regret. Then, footsteps. A shadow at our table. She blinked, pulling herself back as the waiter reappeared, holding the check. "Together or separate?" he asked. Neither of us answered. Her hand hovered near mine, close enough that I felt the warmth of her skin, but she didn't move closer. Instead, she turned her head toward me, voice barely above a whisper. "Noah," she said, "you shouldn't have invited me." And yet, she didn't get up. The rain hadn't stopped by the time we left. It fell in soft sheets, blurring the streetlights, making everything shimmer and uncertain. She hesitated by the door, one hand resting on the frame, as if deciding whether to step out or stay another minute in the cocoon of quiet we'd built. "I can call you a cab," I offered. Elena shook her head. "It's just rain, Noah." Her smile was small, tired at the edges. "I've walked through worse." I opened my umbrella anyway. She sighed, but didn't argue, slipping under its narrow shelter beside me. The street was empty. Our shoulders brushed, lightly at first, then again, more deliberate the second time, like neither of us had the will to correct it. She spoke without looking at me. "You shouldn't have done that, you know." "What?" "Inviting me out. People talk. I don't care what people talk about." Her laugh was soft, but not kind. "You will." We walked another block in silence. I could smell the faint trace of her perfume mixed with rain and cold air. She kept her hands deep in her coat pockets, chin lowered. I wanted to say something about how beautiful she looked like that, unguarded, wind-touched, but the words stayed behind my teeth. I'd known her for 3 years now. Back then, she was the woman who taught me to love sentences, who told me that words were only honest when they made you uncomfortable. She'd been married then, though the ring disappeared sometime last winter. I never asked why. "You still live near campus?" she asked. "For now." "You're wasting your time there," she said. "You always wanted too much out of people. Out of yourself. I learned that from you." That made her glance up. The corner of her mouth twitched, something halfway between pride and regret. "Don't blame me for that." Her hand slipped from her pocket as she adjusted the umbrella, fingers brushing mine. A current moved through me so sharply I almost stopped walking. She must have felt it too. She froze, then drew her hand back slowly, pretending it was nothing. The air between us changed again, heavier, slower. When we reached her building, she turned toward me, keeping one hand on the gate. "Thank you for dinner," she said. The words were polite, but her voice was softer than it should have been. "You're welcome," I managed. The rain dripped from her hairline, tracing a path along her temple. I wanted to reach out, to touch it away, but I didn't. She looked up at me then, eyes searching mine like she was trying to remember the line between right and almost. "You're too young to know better," she whispered. "Maybe," I said. "But I know what I want." Her breath caught, just enough for me to notice. She didn't answer, didn't move. Then, finally, she reached out, barely grazing my sleeve, a touch so light it could have been accidental. But it wasn't. And when she pulled her hand away, the warmth stayed. I didn't mean to see her again so soon. 2 days later, I found myself at the bookstore where she used to spend her afternoons grading papers, pretending not to notice me in the next aisle. I told myself I was just passing by, that it was coincidence. But when she looked up from behind a display of poetry collections, her surprised smile told me she knew better. "Noah," she said, her tone soft but laced with something that sounded like warning. "You're persistent. Or terrible at pretending to move on," I said, setting my coffee down beside hers. Her lips curved, almost a smile. "You shouldn't be here." I could say the same. She sighed, glancing around the quiet shop. Only the soft hum of a ceiling fan and the distant shuffle of pages filled the silence. "I was supposed to meet a friend," she said, almost to herself. "Then I'll leave." But I didn't. Instead, she gestured to the chair across from her. 5 minutes, she said. 5 minutes stretched into 30. We talked about nothing, old novels, new students, the weather, but every word felt like it was hiding something heavier beneath it. She leaned forward once, pushing her hair behind her ear, and her hand brushed mine on the table. Neither of us moved away fast enough. The sound of the bell over the door broke the spell. Someone entered, familiar laughter, a voice she knew. Elena straightened instantly, withdrawing her hand. It was Claire, her colleague from the department. Elena's voice shifted, lighter, professional. "Claire. I thought you were still in Chicago." I forced a polite smile as Claire's eyes flicked toward me, then back to Elena, confusion briefly crossing her face. "Oh," she said, "I didn't realize you were." "Just catching up," Elena cut in smoothly. Noah used to be one of mine. The word mine lingered longer than she meant it to. Claire smiled politely, nodded, and moved to another section. The moment she was gone, Elena exhaled, shoulders dropping. That was close, I said quietly. She gave me a look, half stern, half amused. You enjoy this too much. I enjoy being near you. That silenced her. She looked down at the table, then at my hand still resting there. Her fingers twitched, like she was about to reach across the distance again. Then her phone buzzed. The sound was sharp in the quiet room. She looked at the screen, someone's name flashing, then turned it face down. Her pulse was visible at her throat. I can't do this, she whispered. You already are. Her eyes lifted to mine, and for a long, suspended second, neither of us breathed. The world outside blurred into rain again. It always seemed to when we were like this. She leaned in first, barely, hesitating halfway, close enough that I could feel her breath against my cheek. My hand found the edge of her sleeve. Her voice trembled when she spoke. This has to stop. But she didn't move back. Not yet. The bell above the door rang again, loud and sudden. We both flinched. A gust of cold air rushed in, snapping the moment in half. Elena stood, too quickly. I have to go. She didn't look at me as she left, but her hand brushed my arm in passing, soft, desperate, a silent promise she didn't want to make. And as the door closed behind her, I realized I was still holding my breath. She didn't answer my calls for 3 days. By the 4th, I went to her apartment anyway. I told myself I just wanted to return the book she'd lent me, a worn copy of Letters to a Young Poet. But when she opened the door, her expression said she already knew why I was there. The evening light fell across her face, gold at the edges. She looked tired, softer somehow. Barefoot, a sweater slipping off one shoulder. You shouldn't be here, she murmured, the same line she always used when she didn't mean it. I just came to give this back, I said, holding the book up like a shield. Her eyes flicked to it, then back to me. You could have left it downstairs. I didn't want to. She hesitated, then stepped aside. 5 minutes. The air inside was warm, quiet except for the slow tick of a wall clock. I set the book on her coffee table, but neither of us Saturday. She crossed her arms, trying to look composed, but her breathing gave her away. I've been thinking about you, I said. She froze, eyes narrowing, a small shake of her head. Don't say that. It's true. Her laugh was thin, almost breaking. You think you know what you want, but you don't. You're too young. This, whatever this is, it's a mistake. Then why did you let me in? That landed. She looked at me, something raw flickering across her face. Because I don't know how to stop, she whispered. I moved before I thought, just a step closer. She didn't move away. The scent of her shampoo, something clean and faintly citrus, filled the small distance between us. My hand rose halfway, stopped just short of touching her cheek. Elena, I said quietly. You can tell me to leave. She didn't. Her gaze dropped to my mouth, then darted back up, guilty and wanting all at once. This isn't fair, she said, her voice shaking. You make me feel, she stopped herself, pressing her lips together. Say it. She exhaled, the sound rough. You make me forget who I'm supposed to be. The room felt smaller. My fingers brushed her hair back from her face, slow, uncertain. She closed her eyes at the touch, just for a heartbeat. Then she caught my wrist, her grip trembling. You shouldn't touch me like that, she said, but her thumb moved over my skin, soft, as if she didn't believe her own words. I can stop, I whispered. Then do it, she said. Neither of us moved. Her hand slipped from my wrist to my chest, resting there, feeling the uneven beat beneath. The silence between us wasn't empty, it was full, heavy, breaking at the seams. When she finally looked up again, her eyes were wet, but not from tears. "This isn't just dinner anymore," she said. "No," I breathed. "It never was." For a long, suspended second, the world narrowed to her hand against me, my breath against her skin. She leaned forward, barely, her lips a breath away from mine. Then a sharp knock echoed through the door. We both froze. Her hand dropped away. And everything we hadn't said hung in the air, trembling, unfinished. The knock at the door wasn't random. "Elena," a man's voice called, low, familiar. She went pale. For a second, I thought she might actually faint. "It's Daniel," she whispered. I didn't recognize the name right away. Then I saw it, the quick rearranging of her face, the way she straightened her shoulders, smoothed her sweater. A practice gesture, one she hadn't used with me before. "My ex-husband," she said, barely audible. "He still has a key." I stepped back automatically, heart hammering. "You should." "I know," she cut in. "Just, don't say anything." She opened the door halfway. Daniel stood there with an umbrella dripping rain, his voice calm but edged. "You weren't answering my messages." Elena's tone was steady, but her hand gripped the door so tight her knuckles whitened. "I've been busy." He glanced past her shoulder and saw me. It was only a flicker, a second, but enough. His eyebrows lifted slightly, polite curiosity masking something sharper underneath. "Ah? Company?" Before she could speak, I did. "Just returning a book," I said, trying to sound casual. Elena's breath caught, almost imperceptibly. Daniel smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Of course." He turned back to her. "We'll talk later." When he left, the silence afterward was deafening. Rain hit the windows like static. Elena closed the door slowly, both hands still pressed against it when it latched. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. She shook her head, still facing away. "You shouldn't have had to see that." "Elena." She turned suddenly, eyes fierce. "He thinks I've moved on, and maybe I haven't." "Not really. Not the way I wanted to." The confession landed between us like a dropped glass. "What do you mean?" Her voice broke, raw around the edges. "I mean I spent years pretending I was fine, pretending I didn't want to feel anything again. And then you." She stopped herself, biting her lip hard. I took a step forward, then another. She didn't move away this time. Her hands trembled when she brushed past me, reaching for the table, but her shoulder grazed my chest, lingering just long enough to make it clear she felt the same pull I did. "I wasn't supposed to care this much," she whispered. "Then stop pretending you don't." That made her look up, sharp, startled, as if the words had broken something open. "You don't understand," she said. "You can still start over." "I can't." I caught her wrist gently, just to keep her from walking away. "You're wrong," I said. "You already have." Her breathing hitched, uneven. I could feel the pulse in her wrist, fast under my thumb. For a second, she almost smiled, something fragile and dangerous all at once. Then her phone buzzed again. Daniel's name, lighting up the screen. She stared at it for a long moment, then pressed the screen dark. When she looked back at me, her voice was a whisper. "If I don't stop this now, I won't be able to." I stepped closer, close enough that my breath stirred her hair. "Then don't." Her hand lifted, hesitated, then rested against my chest again, softer this time, resigned. She didn't pull away. Not this time. It was raining again. It always seemed to rain when she and I were about to cross another line. Elena stood near the window, the city lights bleeding through the glass, her reflection split between light and shadow. I watched her from across the room, afraid to move, afraid not to. He still calls, she said quietly, as if talking to herself. Every week. Sometimes I answer. Sometimes I don't. I didn't ask why. I just listened, the way she once taught me to listen, to the pauses, to what wasn't said. Finally, she turned. You shouldn't be here. I know. Then why are you? Because you didn't tell me not to come. Her expression faltered, just for a second. You're impossible. I crossed the space between us. Slowly. The floor creaked beneath us, her breath caught halfway. When I was close enough to see the faint shimmer of moisture on her eyelashes, I stopped. You could still tell me to leave, I said. She shook her head. If I did, you'd stay. I smiled faintly. Probably. She laughed, soft, broken, a sound I wanted to memorize. And then silence again. The room felt too small for the air we weren't breathing. My hand lifted, hesitant, tracing the line of her hair where it brushed her cheek. She closed her eyes, just once, like the touch burned and soothed all at once. Don't do that, she whispered. Why not? Because it makes it harder to lie to myself. Her hands found my shirt, not pulling, not pushing, just resting there, fingers trembling slightly. You're young, she said. You think this means something it doesn't. Then tell me what it does mean. She looked up at me then, eyes glassy in the half-light. It means I remember what it feels like to be wanted. It means you make me feel alive in ways I shouldn't need anymore. Her words landed heavy, but they didn't push me away. If anything, they brought me closer. I could feel the heat between us, almost unbearable, like standing too near an open flame. Elena, I said, barely more than a breath. She looked at me, waiting. If I kiss you, I whispered, there's no going back. Her answer came as barely a sound. Maybe there shouldn't be. I reached for her then, slowly, as if the moment might shatter if I moved too fast. My hand cupped the side of her neck, thumb brushing the hollow just below her jaw. Her pulse was wild beneath my touch. She leaned forward, so close her breath trembled against my mouth. Everything around us blurred, the rain, the ticking clock, the world itself. And then she stopped. Eyes open. Searching. Noah, she said softly, if we start this, it can't be something we regret. I won't, I said. She smiled, small, sad, real. You will. But maybe that's what makes it worth it. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then her forehead rested against mine, her breath warm, unsteady. No kiss. No words. Just everything we'd been holding back, finally shared in silence. When she stepped back, her eyes were calm, clear in a way I hadn't seen before. Now you understand, she said. And for the first time, I did. Weeks passed before I saw her again. No rain this time, just the soft gold of late afternoon spilling through the cafe window. She was sitting by herself, hair pulled back, reading. No tension, no armor, no shadows behind her eyes. For a second, I almost turned around. But she looked up first. A pause. Then that familiar, quiet smile. You still can't stay away, can you? Not really, I said, and meant it. She gestured to the chair across from her. Then sit. I did. The silence between us wasn't the same anymore. It wasn't filled with guilt or unspoken questions, just stillness. The kind that feels earned. I thought about calling, she said after a moment. But I didn't know what I'd say. You just did. That made her laugh, soft and genuine. You're learning. I had a good teacher. Her eyes softened. You make it sound like I taught you something important. You did, I said. You taught me that wanting something doesn't have to be wrong. Her gaze lingered on me for a long moment. Then she reached across the table, fingers brushing mine. The contact was light, almost hesitant, but there was no hiding the warmth beneath it. I was afraid, she admitted. Of what people would think. Of what I'd think of myself. I know, I said quietly. But it doesn't feel wrong anymore, does it? She shook her head. No. Not anymore. Outside, a breeze lifted the corner of her napkin. She caught it absently, smiling at the small disruption. It was such a simple thing, but watching her do it, unhurried, at peace, made something settle inside me. Daniel finally signed the papers, she said after a while. It's over. I'm sorry. Don't be, she said. It was over long before he signed them. I just hadn't let myself admit it. She turned her hand palm up, fingers brushing against mine again. This time, I didn't hesitate. I let my hand slip into hers. The fit was imperfect, her skin cooler than mine, her pulse steadier, but it felt right. Real. We sat like that for a long time, the world moving quietly around us. No declarations, no promises, just the steady rhythm of two people who'd finally stopped pretending. Eventually, she leaned forward, resting her forehead lightly against mine. You know this won't be easy, she whispered. I don't want easy, I said. Her breath warmed my skin, carrying the faintest hint of coffee and something floral. She smiled, small, certain. Then stay. I will. The light shifted, soft and gold, catching in her hair. Outside, someone laughed, a car passed, life went on. Inside, we sat quietly, her hand still in mine, her thumb tracing small, aimless circles that said everything words couldn't. And for the first time, there was no question left hanging in the air. Only an answer, quiet, steady, and ours. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?